Your name before you start.
I'm Stephen, and I'm the Prime Minister of the debate. So, yeah, so everyone ready? Okay. The speech will start. Now, today, as the Prime Minister, the House would allow the cultural difference in all criminal proceedings. And first of all, I want to frame this debate by offering a lot of backgrounds. The first background is that cultural difference will usually happen where the society has a very huge cultural clashes between different groups of people. We see that if there's a society that has that basically have only one culture dominating the whole society, then such society will not face a very huge cultural clashes, which means that people will not use culture as a reason to defend themselves in the criminal proceedings. And second of all, I want to limit to the scope of the debate about the citizen of society. Basically, we want to take out of refugees into societies because A, they're basically newly come to society, which basically meaning that their culture is not that important, not that historically rooted in society. And second of all, we want to say that refugees' rights are not guaranteed by the constitutional law and all of the domestic law of the nation because refugees only hold asylum but not citizenship. And we want to talk about how
Point of clarification?
Yeah.
Okay, would you also limit it from immigrants who could live in a country for 10 years but are not citizens?
We believe RPR is part of the should I stop the time?
No.
Yeah. I mean, legal permanent residence is considered in this debate because they have to obey the local law. However, refugee does not have the right to defend themselves, even if they can be charged to be illegal for their illegal behavior. And we believe that how the society will actually protect such right by giving them cultural difference to the citizens. We believe that the society will thoroughly evaluate the motive when they're committing the crime, and we believe that we are fully capable of doing so because there are scientists and experts who study cultural area, being professional enough to define people's motives. Also, psychologists will help us during the whole process. And we believe that the intrinsic incentive for us to actually provide such cultural difference to the potentially charged criminals is because when people are doing something, there are basically three ways for us to evaluate the process, which are means, motives, and consequences. By simply giving them the right to culturally defend themselves, we're actually taking into the motives of the behavior instead of simply focus on the means and consequences of their behavior. And this is intrinsically just for following reasons. First of all, we want to say that cultural difference solve the motives of the individuals. And because this is not individuals' responsibility to pay for what they have done, we say that the responsibility actually lie on society for the following reasons. A, it is actually the law that did not take care of the current huge social clashes in the society. So it is not individuals' responsibility to pay for what they have pay for what they have believed in the first place. It is actually the law to consider what individuals should do or should not, given the diverse background of the people. And secondly, we want to say that it is actually the education system failed to let the citizens know what is a universal moral value in the society. Because we tell you that different people have so many individual principles and conception of morality. So it is actually the responsibility of education to unite people in society in terms of which is illegal and which is morally unjust to do. So it is not individual to be blamed, but actually society to be blamed in terms of why the people commit the crime in the first place. And secondly, we want to move on to some cost and benefits analysis that actually such taking the right of cultural difference will hurt the individual and society as a whole. First of all, to individual, the reason why individuals can be severely damaged is because A, it is taking out their cultural identity is basically splitting individual identity to different parts. We say that a people will only be mentally healthy when he or she believes that he's a whole intact person. So he has to be they have to be very fully confident about their identity. However, basically accusing that your cultural identity is illegal is basically splitting individual identity apart, which will cause this detrimental effect on individual mental health. And second of all, we want to say that because given the background we frame you, because the current cultural clashes in society is such a detrimental issue, we say that by simply tagging a group of like cultural background as illegal is actually increasing social clashes and social division. For example, this will cause group alienation, which basically leads to more social insecurity and social crisis. We say that this effect is not only against those minority groups who believe that their cultural identity should be like morally correct, but also will spill over to the generic society as a whole. Because when we're talking about confrontation, we're not talking about only one group of people, but talking about two groups of people, which means that all of the society social members will be actually affected by such spillover effect. Basically, the impact will be the insecurity of society that is like hatred crime will increases. That is like people will confront each other violently, physically with their whatever resources they have, and this will poses like a terror effect to the whole society, which not only like affect their security issue, but also create like more social issues. For example, people will no longer be productive when they're feeling like daily insecure, and that will drag down like the economic growth. And for example, people will no longer be mentally healthy when they're feeling like socially insecure, and this will causes like a health issue and a lot of like mental health issue. And we would like to move on to the third argument, that is like cultural identity itself is actually a very important social player in all kinds of social issues. For example, in the Muslim culture, women are required to wear hijab by the law, and this is actually this basically shows that cultural factors itself has enough power to influence the law. So we want to say that cultural identity in general is not like unrealistic and untouchable or unpragmatic. It is such like a realistic and tangible thing to do that you have to take into consideration. And last of all, I want to say that simply having cultural difference in the criminal proceeding system, we're not taking all of the punishment from like those who are who are charged, even if they have like cultural difference. We're saying that we should let this argument heard by other people, and we should let that argument be made because it is principally justified. And we believe that having cultural difference will not taking all of the punishment for the criminal, but basically proportionally reduce their punishment by the motives and reasons they have, and that is the right step into the more just society. So that's my speech.
Thank the speaker for their honorable remarks and call upon the leader of the opposition to open the case for opposition side. I think that's
Oh, do you need mine?
No, it's okay. I think this will be fine. Justin.
Justin.
Honorable panel, we on side opposition believe in multiculturalism. We believe in affirming cultural diversity and differences in cultural background and beliefs. But where we disagree with side government is where it comes into contention with the criminal aspect of the law, with the actual legal system in place, right? I'd like to begin my speech by reading a portion of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person without its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, right? What does this stress? This means that laws apply to people equally, right? One person doesn't get a different standard than another person. Laws are meant to be equal, and laws are meant to be put in place for a reason, right? First, I'd like to get into some rebuttal of what government has just brought to you, and then I'll bring out the main points that we have for side opposition. Begin. Government in their model, we buy most of this model. As we said in the POI, immigrants are included in this, not refugees, with the difference between the two. Also, like, mostly we agree with this idea of, like, there's cultural differences, but, like, we believe this applies to, like, most Western countries in the modern day, where there are many different cultures in these countries that, like, all contend with each other. Maybe there's not, like, directly, like, blood on the, like, streets, like, people, like, going on the streets and, like killing each other, but, like, there's cultural differences. on their first point about the responsibilities lying on society. And so because of that, like the responsibilities lie in society to fix these cultural clashes, right? Their whole premise lies on the fact that the law didn't take into consideration cultural class. No law takes into consideration cultural class. That's not the purpose of the law, right? They're like in any society, there's many different cultures that exist, especially in multicultural societies, like in many Western liberal democracies, right? And like it's not the law's job to take into consideration how each of these cultures play on society. No, the law is there to make sure that all these individuals in society have protection and have like a rule that to live by in society, and like that there's actually like societal structure and like what's legal and what's not. It's not to like affirm like this specific class of people like have this right. Like no, everybody has the same right. Like people are allowed to have their cultural differences. Yeah.
Doesn't the notion of culture apply to every individual in society equally?
I'm not exactly sure what the Prime Minister was trying to get at with that POI. I'm going to assume it's something along the lines of like everybody has the same right to culture, and we agree with that. Everybody does have the same right to culture. The fact of the matter is that most of these laws in place do give the multiple rights to culture, right? If there's any point where a law is specifically like attacking one culture or one class of people, like as stated from the U.S. Constitution, they should be given equal protection of laws. Like the Constitution is not allowed to do that. Maybe in application, it doesn't actually always follow through, but the law is meant there to be equal in scope. Their second point about like cost of society on the individual, they say how like they're not like their cultural identity is illegal. We're not saying their cultural identity is illegal. They're just not allowed to use it as a defense for a criminal like offense, right? They're allowed to have that cultural identity in society, but like anybody like you can't have an American like a white person in America say like, well, my culture of like being a white person American like allows me to do this criminal act. Like no, there's law for a reason. Like we're allowing you to have cultural identity. It's just not allowed to go by the law. And they also talk about society, and their like main point about this is there's insecurity when there's not like affirmation of different cultures, and so this leads to like economic like recession, like disaster, and like mental health, like people are just automatically everybody's depressed. Like what the hell is this? There's no fucking mechanism to explain this where like how any of this happens. It's just like a slippery slope argument that has no mechanism. The third point about like it's important in social issues, like yes, we agree socialists are important and like cultural identity is important, these two, but like we have no reason to believe why this point is relevant in application of this case. Okay, to get into our points. The first point is the respect for and the rule of law are paramount, right? As I've stated, we believe in multiculturalism. We believe in affirming everybody's cultural backgrounds and beliefs and allowing them to exist in society. But the fact of the matter is that the law exists is important for society to function as a whole, right? It lays down what the rule and the law of the land is, and how what the legal structures look like. So what's legal, what's right, what's wrong, right? And like cultural differences, while like they should be affirmed, like they shouldn't really come into play with this, right? Like at most how they come into play should be that we affirm everybody's cultural differences and the legality for them to exist, as long as it doesn't like infringe on like another person's right or another person's individual rights, right? So like where the difference is that like yes, these cultural differences like exist within society, but it doesn't mean that like in the rule of law, like how like one defends themselves against like an act, like in legal proceedings, like that cultural background should be more important than like an equal and fair law. And while we recognize like laws aren't always like applied equally and fairly in some cases, the law is put in place in an equal and fair method at this point in time in most Western liberal democracies, and it's hard to dispute how like where it's put equally in place in the Western liberal democracies now, how like cultural differences are going to be like heard and trampled on like through like the rule of law. Our second point is on the importance for uniformity, specifically in criminal law, as pointed out by the motion, right? There's a big difference between like civil law and like civil suits, where it's like more like just compensation for like, oh, you were raking your tree extends into my yard, like technically because that's my property. Like that's a civil suit, right? And like maybe a cultural defense could exist then, but these are criminal cases, right? This is criminal law where like people are being like either killed or like being assaulted or whatnot, right? And so like why should we give an exception for a cultural background for something that's so serious that actually causes like harm, like serious harm to other individuals, right? We shouldn't like weigh like cultural backgrounds and cultural like multiculturalism over actual like people being harmed or injured. That's just not how it should work. Like if they have a cultural difference and that allows them to like have like a massively reduced sentence because of that defense, like where's the law and the justice in that? Like that just allows people to go free go free earlier when they did like things that actually hurt people. Like if it's a civil suit, fine. But like in a cultural, like in a criminal like trial, like there's no reason that we should be allowing for this to happen. Like the impact of this is that people can just like do things based on their culture that like yes, like maybe like take like Judaism for example, right? You could probably take things like strictly ingrained in like the Torah that are like very important to like the religion, but like maybe they wouldn't apply to like modern day law, modern day society, and the people could do these acts, and then like it's justified under a cultural defense even if they're harming another individual. No, this is bullshit. We throw this out. Our third point is about justification for horrific acts is normalized under this process, which my partner will get more into. And our fourth point is also about backlash against cultural minorities for having this unique exception to the law. Basically, on these 2 points is that people can justify horrific acts against other people with a cultural defense and get off for it, and that because there's a special exception, cultural minority, there will be backlash from the mainstream against the cultural minorities. And for these reasons, we are proud to oppose. Thank you. Thank the speaker for their honorable remarks and call up the Deputy Prime Minister to give their honorable remarks. Here.
7 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Florence. So, first, I would like to start my speech by giving a few points of rebuttal to the points made by the Leader of Opposition. Firstly, Leader of Opposition says that laws have to apply to everyone equally, and we completely agree. We agree with the fact that like laws should not be aimed to discriminate against any minorities or individuals, but we'd like to argue that by allowing cultural defense in all criminal proceedings, we're not advocating for the use of cultural defense as an easy excuse to let like these people who have committed criminal acts out of this judicial trial. We're saying that it should be considered as a factor when evaluating the motives behind their actions. And I think this is important because it allows the judges to better understand their motives, and it also allows them to better like understand to what extent they should be held accountable for their actions. Because so I would like to argue that allowing cultural defense in all criminal proceedings, we're actually better understanding the motives behind those criminals, and we're having therefore allowing the judges to make fairer trials and improving our justice system.
So a defense in a criminal trial, by definition, is a way of saying, I'm not guilty for this reason, and we're now giving a defense in terms of a cultural defense, like we're defining that, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to defend all cases where, like, any criminal trial, because any criminal trial, a cultural defense can occur. It's not just something the judge is taking into consideration. It's trying to say, I'm not guilty because of my cultural background.
Yeah, but just the fact of, like, the fact that they are arguing about the fact, just because of the fact that they are arguing for not being tried guilty because of their culture doesn't mean that the judge has to like listen to their argument and decrease their sentence or lessen their sentence because they made their argument. We're just saying that we should allow cultural defense because culture is a big factor behind social clashes in our society, and it should be taken into consideration when judging criminal trials. Oh, okay, so giving our points, firstly, I would like to say that it is, firstly, as my partner stated, it is not the citizen's responsibility if he or she committed a crime in ignorance due to the fact that he or she acted certain ways that is against the law, because he or she has been brought up their whole life in a specific culture that has taught them to act this way. So, for example, if you live in a culture that has, in a more extreme cases, that has taught you that it is okay to be disrespectful towards women, and you move to another country and you become a citizen there, and then you act in because of your culture, you acted disrespectfully towards women. I'm saying that while this is a very serious problem, we should consider their cultural defense, not because it will make the result of their crime any less, but because by understanding their motive, we can better address their problem. Because what they need is re-education. They don't need to be put in a jail, because if they grew up in their culture their whole life. They don't understand they have done anything wrong. So what we need like a different treatment for a different motive. So if they have a motive that is based on culture, we should put them into a re-education system that teaches them what is right under our legal system instead of just putting them in jail.
So you're saying that there's like no real difference in terms of the punishment from the cultural defense, that it's still like they're still being reprimanded, but that there's just being recognized that it's because of the cultural difference?
No, I'm saying that there should be a significant difference, where by acknowledging that they committed this crime because of their ignorance of our culture and our legal system, they should be put into a re-education system that allows them to better understand our legal system and our culture instead of just shoving them in jail and not doing anything about this. Okay, so secondly, I would like to argue that like our legal system should judge action on means as well as ends, and in a lot of cases, culture can be an important mean and an important motivation behind why people act in certain ways. And by ignoring that means, I'm saying that you're not having a holistic, not having a fair trial of why this person committed this crime. So in order to have the most fair, the most holistic understanding of the motivation behind a certain culture-related criminal proceedings, you have to allow them to make this argument. Because if culture is the main motivation, you can't just ignore the main motivation and say that, oh, this issue, this very concrete social issue of cultural clashes in our society does not exist. So I think this will allow our judicial system to be extremely biased and extremely unfair towards certain trials. And I think this has a significant impact on our society, because by not understanding the motive behind them, if you don't understand the cause of a problem, you can't treat that problem, can you? So if you don't understand what is motivating them to commit those criminal acts, you cannot prescribe them the proper treatment that will help them understand what they have done wrong and help them reintegrate into our culture and our legal system. And so I'm saying that the impact of not allowing cultural defense in criminal trials is extremely bad, because it not only results in unfair and biased partial judicial evaluation of certain crimes, it also prevents the judge and our legal system to properly react and respond to those people who fell out of the mainstream culture because they're brought up in an environment taught in a certain way that is different from our mainstream culture. And I would like to argue that they should not be punished. They should be re-educated instead, because it's not their fault that they're brought up a certain way. So we should not punish them because of their ignorance and their upbringing. Okay. Well, yes, that is my point. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the speaker for our remarks, and we now call to the floor the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to close out this debate. You're here.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. Hi, Florence. This is a school. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Wow. A little aggressive. Okay. Okay. Ready? Okay. Oh yeah. I already said my name. What am I doing? Okay. Honorable panel, we think that under the current society where we see, especially in like Western democracies, like in the United States, where we see extreme generalization and negative associations with certain groups within the society, we think that this motion is especially dangerous in setting a precedent in furthering the divide that exists within the country and then allowing and legitimizing their reasons for fear of different cultures. Now, I'll be expanding on this, on my partner's points, and then with my rebuttals woven throughout. So first, on the point of how this would better accountability into, because it puts a factor of like people's cultures. But we think that put like judicially weighing people's cultures legitimizes how people's different like different cultural backgrounds, like their religion, or like what they're teaching them in terms of, and like no, sorry, that was really bad. This will legitimize. We think it's dangerous to have this like this weight on people's like culture, like such as their religion, because what this communicates is that their religion or like their cultural background is directly teaching them like motivating them to commit like these criminal acts. And this is particularly dangerous because currently what we see, like let's say in the United States, we have seen anti like Muslim bans where we see like where people have extreme negative kind of like generalizations of the Muslim community, especially with the idea of terrorism. And we think that this will actually this would justify all the people who are anti-Muslim, because it allows them to say that because like in court when we're legally considering their backgrounds and their religion in the process, what this communicates to these people is that their religion is not directly teaching them and like motivating their actions, whereas it's actually more of like the responsibility of the individual. So what this does directly is that it dilutes the responsibility of the individual and puts the majority of the weight on the culture. And then this is dangerous for the individuals who did not commit the act but are a part of that culture, because now you lead to more of a generalization of what that culture encompasses and what that culture is teaching to its people. So this is particularly bad for people who are part of culture but not committing these acts, but are still now suffering the consequences from the generalization that this is now furthering in the society. This like backs into the point of how at least it sets a dangerous precedent of the justification for horrific acts, and the consequences of this is like the backlash that you would get from the current people who are already anti-Muslim, who are already anti-immigrants. Okay, yeah, does that make sense? Okay, that makes sense. So in terms of this debate, like in terms of what we're prioritizing, if we're prioritizing the greater acceptance of different cultural backgrounds, we think you don't get that on their side when you allow for like the legitimization of cultural backgrounds in like a judicial system to adjust. In like the context of justifying criminal acts. We think that that's particularly dangerous, because when you're dealing with criminals and then who like already have like who are like doing these dangerous acts, criminals, and then like the stigma that comes along with them, having them like being and then like now diluting their responsibility from the individual to their culture sets even more of a burden on that culture in terms of. And then like what this does, it pushes that culture away and from the mainstream, because it teaches the people it teaches the other people that this culture, it's like these like their beliefs are directly motivating the people to commit these actions. So in terms of like the backlash, like what I already touched upon some of this, but I'll go into more of it. So what exactly are the backlashes? One, we see a further divide, because this further solidifies people's fear of different backgrounds, because now in court we allow for the legitimization of them to be like judicially considered. So this and then what this means is that so now you have a stronger association of people from certain groups with like terrorism or something. So what this means is that you're gonna see even a more extreme like anti-white people in the U.S. or like anti-immigration, and then what this does is it directly interferes with like the mobility of people coming into the U.S. because you see that you might like prohibit people from different cultures, knowing that these cultures have been teaching you these things, and that the people don't, and then they think that we don't want to bring like these thoughts they might bring danger into the U.S. or like whatever country we're talking about. So this will actually directly interfere with the immigration process coming into the U.S. And this is particularly bad because given that we actually see a shortage of workforce labor in like especially in like a lot of industries, where we see that like immigrants actually make up a large foundation of the economy. So this like directly impacts in terms of like how like the practicality of like the efficient economy and like efficient labor distribution in the world. Okay, okay. And any POIs from Gov side?
How will how will your side communicate like the cultural minority and majority?
Like communicate?
Like build up communication between and solve like misunderstanding between the majority and minority.
We agreed that like we definitely see that there's a problem between like the extreme polarization that we see in our society, but we think that like under like this motion on our side, on opposition, we're trying to just need to show you that while you get a worst case scenario on government side, it's not necessarily our job to give you an alternative to that, which we think we have already shown you that in terms of seeing like the legitimacy and like the justification sets a horrible precedent, a dangerous precedent, which will actually lead lead to a further divide, and that and then like this will lead to people like becoming even harder for them to accept people who are different in the future. When we're already dealing with people with very like conservative mindsets or very like fixed mindsets, so you get that we think that it's worse off on their side. So so opposition, we think that we have like come above government for a couple of points. For one, when we're prioritizing like the acceptance of greater backgrounds, we think that it's worse off. We have shown to you why it's worse off on government side. And two, my partner Justin has shown you like in terms of just like the practicality of the way that the judicial system works, that you will we think that this goes against the way that it currently functions. And we think that for people who we're not dealing with refugees, we're dealing with immigrants and like I guess people who, like coming here in that case. So for people who are voluntarily coming into these countries, we think it's important for them to have like a basic responsibility to like learn the way like the laws function in like the new country, and we think that while it's important for them, like I guess like there is a cultural background, but we think that this allows them to actually like further as an excuse to not understand the law, because this provides not to understand the law, but like further apart from where they are, because this allows them to like see that their religion is a legitimate, like their culture is a legitimate excuse like to this. Okay, thank you for listening. Policy opposed.
Thank you.